The galaxy was silent, until it wasn't. From the edge of known space, a massive ship appeared out of nowhere. Not drifting, not lost, but moving with absolute purpose, as if it had been waiting for this moment. Its sheer size dwarfed even the largest orbital stations, casting a shadow across the stars. Alien eyes across the galaxy widened in disbelief. It wasn't like anything they had ever seen before. It was not built by the mighty empire of Kryn, whose crimson fleets had ruled entire star systems. It was not the creation of the Zarkan Syndicate, feared for their merciless raiding armadas. And it was certainly not a relic of the ancient council builders, whose technology was said to rival the gods themselves. No, this ship was something entirely new, something that had no place in the records of galactic history. On the ship's blackened hull, glowing like fire in the void, were two words: Humanity United. For the first time in its long and divided history, humanity had achieved the impossible. After centuries of infighting, wars, greed, and mistrust, they had finally built a single colossal warship, not representing one nation, but the entire human race. It was the culmination of all their science, all their ambition, and all their stubborn willpower. And the galaxy, which had long ignored them as a minor species, was about to learn the true meaning of what humanity could achieve when united. At first, the arrival was met with confusion and disbelief. The Galactic Council convened in panic. Some ambassadors insisted the humans be welcomed, fearing the consequences of hostility. Others demanded the ship's immediate destruction, declaring it a threat too great to be allowed to exist. After all, no single species had ever dared to construct a vessel of such terrifying scale. The Aegis, as humans named it, was not only a ship, but a fortress, a city, and a weapon that bent the very laws of physics. Its engines warped spacetime itself. Its cannons could rip through fleets in a single shot. But fear always leads to violence. And soon enough, fear won. When the Council's fleet approached the Aegis under the pretense of a diplomatic escort, the first shot was fired. To this day, no one knows which side pulled the trigger first. Some say it was a nervous alien captain, panicking at the sight of the massive ship powering its weapons. Others claim humanity deliberately provoked the encounter to show its strength. Whatever the truth, the moment energy beams struck the shields of the Aegis, there was no turning back. The humans answered with overwhelming force. Swarms of AI-controlled drones poured from the ship like a black tide, ripping through the alien armada. A single railgun volley vaporized the Kryn flagship, its remains scattering like ash. The Zarkan war cruisers, once feared across the galaxy, were annihilated in seconds. The Aegis fought not with desperation, but with precision, like a predator finally unleashed after being caged too long. The galaxy had underestimated humanity. For centuries, humans were dismissed as scattered, fragile, and chaotic, a young species barely worthy of notice. But now, united under one banner, they were unstoppable. Every strike they made sent shockwaves across the stars. Worlds that had once mocked or ignored humanity now trembled at the sound of its name. The war spread quickly. Some species surrendered instantly, begging for peace before they too were destroyed. Others banded together in desperate alliances, throwing fleets of thousands against the Aegis. But each time, the result was the same. The ship cut through their armadas, leaving wreckage drifting in the void. Humanity had not come to beg for a place at the table, they had come to take it by force if necessary. Yet there was something strange about their war. The humans did not conquer planets. They did not enslave the defeated. They left no occupation armies behind. They struck hard, shattered resistance, and moved on. At first the galaxy could not understand this strategy. Why unleash such destruction without taking control? Why bleed so much without demanding tribute? The answer came one day, broadcast across every channel, on every frequency, to every world in the galaxy. A voice, calm but unyielding, echoed from the Aegis itself: "We did not come to destroy. We came to be heard. For too long, you ignored us. For too long, you dismissed us. Today, you will never forget the name of humanity. And just like that, the great ship vanished. No one saw it leave. No warp signature, no trace, nothing but silence where a storm had raged. Some believed it had returned to Earth, others whispered it was hidden, waiting for the day it would rise again. The galaxy, however, was forever changed. Borders collapsed, economies crumbled, and alliances were redrawn, all because of one ship that appeared and then disappeared into the void. Some races cursed humanity as monsters. Others admired them as visionaries. But one truth remained undeniable: the day humanity united, the galaxy went to war. And nothing would ever be the same again. At first, alien observers thought it was a mistake, an error in judgment, or perhaps an exaggeration of human ambition. One species building a ship so massive that it dwarfed orbital stations and even small moons. It sounded impossible, almost laughable. The great empires of the galaxy had tried such feats before, and every attempt had collapsed under the weight of its own arrogance. Yet there it was, hanging in the void like a god forged of steel and fire, the one humanity ship. The alien studied it with unease. The hull gleamed black, its surface etched with glowing lines of energy. The design was nothing like the sleek elegance of the Kryn Empire or the brutal, jagged ships of the Zarkan Syndicate. It was something raw, something defiant, something that declared, "We are here. We are one." The Galactic Council, a coalition of the oldest and most powerful races, gathered in urgency. Debate raged in their chambers. Some ambassadors urged caution, demanding diplomacy. "Perhaps the humans only seek recognition," one whispered. "Perhaps they want a seat at the table." But others, more fearful, saw only danger. They looked at the ship and saw not unity, but conquest. At last, the council voted. A delegation would be sent, not just diplomats, but warships, too. They would escort the humans, watch them closely, and ensure this new power knew its place. And so, fleets of alien vessels streaked through the stars toward the human flagship. But when the council's ships arrived, something shocking happened. The delegation opened fire. Why? Because fear had overcome reason. The moment the aliens scanned the humans' vessel, they realized the truth: this was no ordinary battleship. It was a fortress armed with weapons that bent space itself. Its energy cannons hummed with unimaginable power, capable of vaporizing entire fleets with a single blast. Its railguns, hidden within its spine, could crack a planet's crust like an eggshell. Its AI-controlled drones swarmed in such numbers that they could blot out the stars. To the Council, this ship was not a visitor. It was not an envoy. It was a threat to the order they had maintained for thousands of years. And threats, they decided, had to be destroyed before they could grow. The first shot blazed across the void, striking the shields of the human warship. For a heartbeat, the galaxy held its breath. Then the humans answered. The Aegis retaliated with a ferocity no one expected. Its shields flared like suns, absorbing the assault as if it were nothing more than a summer rain. Then its weapons roared to life. A single railgun volley tore through the Kryn flagship, scattering its pieces into the abyss. Drone swarms exploded from its hangars, black clouds of precision-guided machines that ripped apart enemy formations with surgical strikes. In seconds, the proud fleets of the Council were reduced to burning wreckage. Ships that had ruled the stars for centuries were shattered like glass beneath a hammer. The aliens who had fired first realized their mistake too late. Humanity had been underestimated for too long. The war began that day. From world to world, the news spread like wildfire. The humans had built a ship that could fight entire armadas and win. For centuries, they had been dismissed as a minor species, too chaotic and divided to matter. But now, united under one banner, they had become something the galaxy had never faced before, a single will, forged in steel and fire, demanding to be heard. Planets trembled. Some species surrendered instantly, pleading for peace. Others joined forces in desperate alliances, throwing everything they had against the humans' warship. Yet none could stop it. Each time, the result was the same. The Aegis cut through their fleets with merciless precision, leaving behind only drifting debris and silence. But humanity's campaign was strange. They did not conquer. They did not colonize. They did not enslave those who fell before them. They struck with overwhelming force, shattered resistance, and moved on. To many, it seemed like madness. What did they want, if not domination? Why unleash such devastation without claiming the spoils? The answer came months later, when a broadcast echoed across every star system. On every channel, in every language, a human voice spoke. Calm. Steady. Unyielding. We did not come to destroy. We did not come to rule. We came to be heard. For too long, you ignored us. For too long, you dismissed us. Today, you will never forget the name of humanity. And just as suddenly as it had appeared, the great ship vanished into the void. No warp trail, no lingering signal, no clue of where it had gone. Some claimed it returned to Earth, hidden until the day it would rise again. Others believed it roamed the stars, watching, waiting for the next challenge. The galaxy, however, was forever changed. Borders collapsed. Old empires faltered. Entire civilizations rewrote their strategies, terrified of the day the humans might return. Some cursed them as destroyers, monsters cloaked in steel. Others admired them as visionaries, a species that had found true unity when the galaxy thought it impossible. But one truth became undeniable. The moment the aliens fired on the Aegis, diplomacy ended. The galaxy fired the first shot. Humanity fired back. And nothing, would ever be the same again. The response was brutal. The galaxy had fired the first shot, but humanity answered with a fury no one had expected. The Aegis, the one humanity ship, came alive like a sleeping beast finally stirred. Its hull blazed with light, its cannons glowed, and its engines howled with power that bent the very fabric of space. For too long, humanity had been underestimated, dismissed as a small, fragile species struggling to find its place among the stars. But now, united under one banner, they had forged a weapon that would make the galaxy tremble. The Aegis unleashed devastation unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Swarms of AI-controlled drones burst forth from its hangars, darkening the stars like a tidal wave of steel. Thousands upon thousands of machines moved in perfect unison, faster than thought, more precise than any pilot. Alien admirals watched in horror as their carefully arranged fleets crumbled before the swarm. Ships that had once ruled sectors of space were shredded in minutes, their hulls torn apart by coordinated strikes that left no chance for survival. And then came the railgun. A weapon so massive, so devastating, that even speaking of it would have once been dismissed as fantasy. From the core of the Aegis, a single colossal shot thundered forth, a beam of pure kinetic force traveling at near light speed. The Zarkan fleet, feared across the galaxy for its brutality, had gathered its flagships in formation, confident in their numbers. But confidence meant nothing. In one terrifying instant, their command ship, an armored titan that had led countless wars, was obliterated. The railgun shot pierced its shields, tore through its heart, and split it into fragments that scattered like burning meteors across the void. The message was clear. Humanity had arrived. But this was not blind destruction. The humans were not fighting for the thrill of conquest, nor to wipe out their rivals. Their strikes were calculated, purposeful, and symbolic. Every fleet shattered, every flagship destroyed, every base erased was a declaration to the galaxy: humanity will never again bow. Humanity will never again hide. Humanity will never again be ignored. For centuries, humans had been treated as a minor race. Their worlds overlooked, their ambassadors dismissed, their fleets considered laughably small compared to the great powers of the galaxy. They were tolerated, at best. At worst, they were mocked, used, and forgotten. But no longer. The day had come when humanity spoke in a language the galaxy understood, the language of power. And it was a language they now commanded with terrifying fluency. The war spread faster than anyone could control. Reports flooded across the stars. Entire armadas wiped out in minutes. Worlds that had once sneered at humanity now trembled at the thought of their approach. Some planets broadcast desperate messages of surrender before the humans even arrived, terrified that the Aegis might one day appear above their skies. Others tried to fight, rallying allies and gathering fleets larger than any seen in history. But numbers no longer mattered. The Aegis was not just a ship, it was a statement, a symbol, and a weapon that embodied the will of billions. Still, there was something strange about the campaign. Humanity did not conquer. They did not land armies on planets. They did not enslave the species they defeated. Instead, they struck with overwhelming force, shattered resistance, and moved on. To the aliens, this was baffling. Why unleash such destruction without claiming the spoils of war? Why break the galaxy's fleets, only to leave the planets untouched? The answer was hidden in the hearts of the humans themselves. They were not here for territory. They were not here for resources. They were here to demand respect. For too long, they had been ignored. For too long, they had been considered insignificant. The Aegis was not a conqueror's blade, it was a megaphone, a declaration screamed into the stars. And the galaxy could not ignore it. Every battle added to the legend. Every strike carved humanity's name deeper into galactic memory. The Aegis became a ghost story, whispered in fear across distant worlds. Admirals spoke of it in hushed tones, their voices shaking. Civilians looked to the sky with dread, wondering if the black silhouette of the great ship would appear above them. The balance of power, carefully maintained for millennia, shattered like glass under the heel of a united humanity. Finally, after months of relentless war, the humans delivered their message. Across every channel, in every language, their voice rang out, "We did not come to destroy. We did not come to rule. We came to be heard. For too long, you ignored us. For too long, you dismissed us. Today, you will never forget the name of humanity." And just like that, the Aegis disappeared. No one knew how or where. Some believed it returned to Earth, hidden away until it was needed again. Others swore it was still out there, drifting silently through the void, watching and waiting. But one truth was undeniable. The galaxy, once so sure of its order, was forever changed. Empires trembled. Alliances shattered. Species rethought everything they believed about power and unity. Humanity had arrived, and they had arrived with fire. After centuries of silence, mockery, and dismissal, humanity had risen united, powerful, and ready for war. And from that day forward, no one in the galaxy would ever again dare to call them insignificant. News spread faster than light. Across the galaxy, from the richest core worlds to the most distant colonies, whispers of the humans' worship grew into roaring fear. The Aegis had become more than a vessel, it was a shadow cast across every star system. Entire species that once laughed at humanity's primitive fleets now trembled at the mere mention of their name. Those who once mocked them now bowed their heads, hoping the great ship would pass them by. Some species surrendered instantly, their leaders broadcasting desperate pleas for peace before a single shot was fired in their direction. They offered tribute, alliances, even servitude, all in the hope of avoiding the Aegis' wrath. Others, proud and stubborn, refused to kneel. They declared humanity a danger to all life, a cancer that had to be cut out before it spread further. For the first time in millennia, bitter rivals and sworn enemies joined forces, uniting their fleets in alliances so massive that the stars themselves seemed crowded with warships. But it didn't matter. The Aegis was unstoppable. Every battle became a legend retold in fear and awe. Alien armadas numbering in the thousands fell before it like sandcastles swept away by the tide. Swarms of drones blotted out the sky, carving through formations with surgical precision. Railgun volleys cracked apart flagships once thought indestructible. Entire fleets that had taken centuries to build were reduced to drifting graveyards in minutes. Every strike was a reminder of what humanity could achieve when united. For centuries, their greatest weakness had been division. Nations quarreled, governments fractured, wars burned their own soil. But now, all of Earth had poured its strength, its technology, and its will into a single creation. And that creation moved with the fury of a people who had endured being ignored for too long. Still, the cost of this war was greater than anyone could have imagined. The galaxy itself began to unravel. Trade routes that had bound the stars together for centuries collapsed. Merchant convoys vanished into ambushes or refused to sail at all, terrified of crossing paths with humanity's fleets. Economies crumbled, plunging entire civilizations into famine and despair. Borders that had stood for thousands of years dissolved overnight. Worlds that once swore loyalty to ancient empires broke away, seeking protection from humanity, or worse, from the chaos that followed in the Aegis wake. Old enemies, once sworn to eternal hatred, became uneasy allies. Entire species set aside blood feuds that had lasted millennia, standing shoulder to shoulder against a single threat, the united human race. But even together, they could not stop what was coming. On every battlefield, the Aegis turned the tide. Each time the galaxy thought it had finally trapped the humans, they were wrong. Ambushes became massacres. Sieges became routs. Battles meant to be humanity's last stand ended with alien fleets burning in the void. The war was tearing the galaxy apart, not because humanity sought conquest, but because their very presence forced the galaxy to confront truths it had buried for ages. The truth that unity was power. The truth that arrogance was weakness. The truth that a species once dismissed as fragile had built something no empire had dared to dream of. For some, this realization was unbearable. They hated humanity with every breath, vowing vengeance no matter how long it took. For others, it was awe-inspiring. On distant worlds, ordinary beings whispered of humans not as destroyers, but as visionaries, creatures who had turned centuries of division into unmatched strength. But to every ruler, every admiral, every council delegate, one fact was undeniable: the galaxy they had known was gone. In the shadows of this war, rebellion sparked. Planets overthrew their governments, demanding new leaders who could stand against humanity, or lead them to peace with them. Ancient alliances dissolved. The old balance of power, carefully crafted over ages, shattered like glass under the weight of a single ship carrying the will of billions. And still, the Aegis advanced. But there was a mystery in its campaign. For all its destruction, the humans did not seize planets. They did not enslave the conquered. They did not demand tribute or claim territory. They struck, they shattered, and then they left. To the galaxy's rulers, this was baffling. Why fight such a war without conquest? Why sacrifice so much without building an empire in the ashes? The answer came not from politics, but from humanity itself. They were not here to rule. They were not here to claim dominion. They were here to be recognized. To be respected. To be remembered. Every fleet destroyed was not an act of conquest, but a message: humanity will never again bow. Humanity will never again be ignored. And slowly, painfully, the galaxy began to listen. Some saw the Aegis as a monster, a weapon too dangerous to exist. Others saw it as a miracle, proof of what unity could achieve. But all agreed on one thing: the war had changed everything. The galaxy's golden age of order was over, shattered by a single ship that appeared from the darkness carrying the fire of an entire species. The old powers would never recover. The borders would never be the same. And the name of humanity would echo in every corner of the stars for generations to come. And then, silence. After years of relentless battles, after fleets had burned and empires had collapsed, the thunder of the Aegis finally faded. No more railgun blasts cracked the void. No more drone swarms darkened the skies. The colossal ship that had shaken the foundations of the galaxy simply stopped. For months, observers watched nervously, expecting the next strike. They braced for the invasion of worlds, the raising of banners, the demand for tribute. Yet none of that came. The Aegis hung motionless at the edge of council space, weapons quiet, engines dimmed, like a beast that had grown tired of the hunt. The galaxy, wounded and weary, held its breath. And then, across every frequency, in every language, on every screen and every comm channel, came a voice. It was human, calm, steady, and unshaken. We did not come to destroy. We did not come to rule. We came to be heard. For too long, you ignored us. For too long, you dismissed us. Today, you will never forget the name of humanity. The words cut through the stars like a blade. Billions across the galaxy listened in silence. On alien worlds, children who had grown up fearing the black silhouette of the Aegis now stared in wonder at the message. Soldiers who had fought against humanity lowered their weapons, realizing that the enemy they had feared so much had never wanted to enslave them. Politicians who had once laughed at the idea of humans as equals now felt the weight of their arrogance. And then, without warning, the Aegis moved. Its engines flared once, bright as a newborn star, and the massive ship vanished into the void. No warp trail. No signature. No trace of where it had gone. One moment it was there, the most feared vessel the galaxy had ever known, and the next, it was gone. The galaxy was left in stunned silence. Some called the Aegis a monster. To them, it was a terror forged of steel and fire, a weapon that had slaughtered millions and left entire fleets as drifting graveyards. They swore humanity had unleashed a nightmare that should never have been allowed to exist. Even in its absence, they feared its return, whispering that one day it would come again, hungrier and more merciless than before. Others called it a miracle. To them, the Aegis was proof of what unity could accomplish. A symbol of a young species that had risen from chaos, put aside its endless divisions, and forged a single will strong enough to shake the galaxy itself. These voices argued that humanity had not brought destruction, but change, a change the galaxy had long needed but had been too afraid to embrace. Regardless of whether they saw it as a monster or a miracle, one truth was undeniable: the day humanity united, the galaxy went to war. And nothing would ever be the same again. The aftershocks of the Aegis campaign rippled through every star system. Ancient empires that had once seemed eternal found themselves crumbling, their subjects questioning why their rulers had led them into unwinnable wars. Trade networks that had stood for centuries collapsed, forcing civilizations to rebuild from the ashes. Former enemies, bound by their shared fear of humanity, now found themselves tentative allies, unwilling to return to their old feuds. But perhaps the greatest change was in perception. For the first time, humanity was no longer overlooked, no longer dismissed as a minor, chaotic species from a backwater world. Their name carried weight. Their presence demanded respect. Even in their silence, the memory of their unity haunted the galaxy. Generations later, children of alien worlds would ask their parents where they were the day the Aegis appeared. Veterans would tell stories of battles that felt more like legends than memories. Leaders would remind their councils that dismissing a species, no matter how small, was a mistake they could never afford to repeat. And humanity? No one knew where they had gone. Some claimed the Aegis returned to Earth. Hidden deep within the solar system, a silent guardian waiting for the day it would be called upon again. Others whispered it was out there still, patrolling the edges of the galaxy, watching, listening, waiting. What was certain was this: humanity had not sought conquest. They had not sought empire. They had sought recognition. And through fire and blood, they had carved their place into the memory of the stars. The galaxy would recover, as it always did, but it would never return to what it once was. The Aegis had seen to that. The Council would never again dismiss the cries of a younger race. No one would ever again underestimate the strength that could come from unity. And even in peace, the shadow of the Aegis would linger, a constant reminder that the quietest voices, when united, could roar louder than all the empires combined. And so, the story of the Aegis became legend. A tale told in fear, in awe, and in respect. A reminder that one ship, carrying the will of billions, had changed the course of the galaxy forever. Some called it a monster. Others called it a miracle. But in the end, it was both. And one truth remained clear: the day humanity united, the galaxy went to war, and nothing would ever be the same again. If you enjoyed this story of humanity's rise, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more epic tales from the stars. And don't forget to hit the bell icon, so you never miss the next chapter of galactic adventure.